Walking Dead has had many different bombastic season finales, finales that changed the group dynamic forever, finales filled with gunfire and hordes of walkers, and one finale that was a bit more tame than all of this. When I say tame, do I mean bad? Absolutely not, but the season 5 finale Conquer explored a lot of different character drama and set the stage for a lot of what was to come. But Conquer is really like a part 2 of the finale, with the episode before it, called Try, being the first part of the finale. I tried writing this video just about Conquer, but I found myself setting up a lot of what happened in the previous episode, so I'm going to do Try and Conquer together in this video. Season 5 changed a lot of what we knew about The Walking Dead. With the introduction to Alexandria, we saw the first community that was more or less normal compared to the outside world. The show shifted from being an adventure on the road to a more modern drama. These episodes were the last of the modern drama era of The Walking Dead, and while not as explosive as other season finales, it's just as, if not more, great than some of those explosive finales. So what marked the conclusion of the modern drama era? How did Rick inspire such a drastic change in this community? And what makes Try and Conquer such underrated episodes? Let's recap the episodes and then answer all of those questions and a bit more. We start the episode off with a grieving Monroe family after the death of their son, Aiden. They put on one of their son's mixtapes, and we see what else the rest of the community is going through. Carol is keeping up appearances, baking a casserole, and Sasha is going through her own issues while keeping watch in the tower. Deanna opens the door, and we see Carol's casserole with a note saying that they're truly sorry for their loss. Deanna takes the note, but leaves the casserole and burns the note. Daryl and Aaron are out scouting for new people when they notice a fire out in the distance. A fire that may well belong to a very familiar face. Glenn and Nicholas give different recounts of their adventure on the road that resulted in Aiden's death. One of these recounts is the truth, and the other is a lie. I'll let you guess which one is which. Nicholas blames the others, giving Deanna a bigger reason to distrust Rick and the group. Glenn and Rick continue their discussions about what's wrong with the community. Rick says that the Alexandrians aren't ready to understand yet, but Glenn tells them that they are Alexandrians now. They have to make things work here, and Rick walks off. He joins Carol, who's watching the Anderson family outside. Carol tells Rick about Pete's abusive nature towards Jesse, again forcing Rick to think about how things need to change. Carol talks about how personal this issue is to her, and how she knows it's personal to Rick too. Rick walks off again, going to think things over for himself when he notices Pennywise's balloon. Pete walks up to him, and Rick, trying to remain calm, tells him to keep walking. Quick side note, this is a very underrated badass Rick moment. Rick goes to talk to Deanna about the problem with Pete. Apparently, Deanna knew about it and just hoped it would get better. They argue about what to do with Pete, Deanna saying that she would exile him, and Rick saying that he would just kill him. Deanna says that they don't kill people in this community because it's not civilized. But Rick says in this day and age, killing somebody if they don't listen to orders is civilized. Michonne and Rosita go to look for Sasha while Carl and Enid play out their teenage love story, finding a convenient tree that's hollowed out inside, which I've never seen before because I don't think trees like this exist. Glenn goes to confront Nicholas, telling him that the deaths of everybody that died on that trip are on him, and he's gonna have to live with that. Glenn tells Nicholas that he's not going outside these walls again. He's not threatening him, he's saving him. Nicholas disobeys this order and goes to get a gun that he's hidden, the very same gun that Rick had outside Alexandria when they first arrived. Michonne and Rosita catch up with Sasha, who's going on a rampage against the Walkers, which reminds Michonne of her rampages against the Walkers, so she joins in on the fun. Aaron and Daryl stumble across some mutilated Walker bodies with more W's carved in their foreheads. Rick approaches Jesse, telling her that he knows what Pete is doing to her, and Jesse says, no, everything's fine, everything's gonna be alright, but Rick says that no, it's not, and the next step is gonna be her death, and he won't allow that to happen. Jesse shuts him out, wondering why he's even going through all this trouble in the first place. Rick walks away, seeing all of the Alexandrians living their perfectly normal, happy lives, and something snaps in him. He goes back to Jesse, convincing her that he can keep her safe if she asks him to. She asks him if he would do this for somebody else, and he says no, he wouldn't. Jesse then accepts his help when Pete walks into the room. Pete asks Rick to leave, but Jesse says no, Pete needs to leave. Pete gets angry at Rick and approaches him, taking a swing at him. Rick tries to remain calm, but then throws him through the window. They fight in the street, and the entire community approaches, Jesse trying to get Pete off of Rick when he hits her, giving Rick the extra push he needed to overtake Pete. Rick then takes this extra push and pushes Carl away. Deanna approaches and says that enough is enough. Rick then takes out his hidden gun, saying that there's something wrong with this community and things need to change, because we're the ones who live. Rick demands that things need to be different and they need to control who lives here. Deanna says that's never been more clear to her, and Rick turns into the Joker for a second. Now Michonne says enough is enough and knocks him out. We then see Morgan waking up in a car on the side of the road. He goes to make himself some breakfast when he's approached by a man with a gun. Morgan very calmly talks to the man, asking what the W on his forehead stands for. The wolf gives a brief history on why they call themselves wolves, before telling Morgan he's gonna kill him and take all of his stuff. Another wolf tries to ambush Morgan, and he pulls out his Ninja Turtles moveset and easily overcomes them. He calmly sets them in the car and walks away. Rick wakes up in a pseudo jail cell with Michonne, who's angry at him for not letting her in on his plan. The rest of the group walks in to tell him that Deanna is holding a meeting about Rick tonight. Carol tells Rick what to say about taking the gun and where he got it from, but neglects telling the others about how they actually have more guns. Rick devises a plan to overtake the community that night if it comes down to it, but he says he doesn't want to have to do it. Maggie tries to talk some sense into Deanna, saying that if the group wants to banish Rick, then it's not going to go the way she thinks. Sasha lays down on a pile of walkers. Daryl and Aaron continue tracking this mysterious person they're trying to recruit. Carol comes in to reaffirm her allegiance to Rick, giving him another gun. Rick asks her why she didn't just tell the others that they had more guns. Carol says it was a precaution just in case they weren't totally in line with Rick. Rick says he wants to stop lying to everybody, but Carol reminds him that he also told everybody he doesn't want to take this place over, which is a lie.
See, now that right there is a lie.
Glenn and Maggie talk about how they're going to get past tonight when Glenn notices Nicholas going over the wall, so he follows him. Rick warns Carl that he might have to fight tonight, and Carl tells him that he needs to tell these people what he already told them, but in a way that they'll all listen. Aaron and Daryl continue following the man when they stumble upon a factory. Aaron finds an Alaska plate, and they say that they might not be able to find this man that they were looking for, but if they come away with a truck full of food, then the trip would be a success. They open the truck, but it sets off a trap that opens all of the trucks, and out comes dozens of walkers, all of them marked with a W on their forehead. Daryl and Aaron retreat and get cornered in a car. Carol goes to Pete, giving him a casserole now, but threatening to kill him because nobody would ever believe that she killed him out of hatred. Glenn continues following Nicholas out into the woods, where a bullet hits him in his shoulder, a bullet fired by Nicholas. Nicholas goes to see him, but Glenn is gone. Rick goes to Jesse, wanting to see how she is, but she tells him that she really shouldn't be seen talking to him right now, but before he leaves, Jesse says that he's right about everything. And Jesse was correct in saying that nobody should see them talking because Pete looks in from a distance. Daryl and Aaron talk about their seemingly impending deaths, Daryl saying that he'll draw them away so that way Aaron can get away, but Aaron refuses, saying that they're gonna fight together, even if it means their deaths. Just as they're about ready to leave, a stick gets pierced through a walker's head, giving them a moment to escape, and the two of them meet Morgan. Aaron invites Morgan back to Alexandria, but he refuses, saying that he's looking for someone, but he's lost and needs help on where to go. He hands the map to Daryl, a map that says the name Rick Grimes. Father Gabriel goes to meet his fate, but he gets cold feet at the last second and ends up killing the walker and his walker buddy. Father Gabriel comes back to Alexandria, but doesn't shut the gate completely. Glenn ambushes Nicholas in the forest, and the two continue their duel when a group of walkers approaches and covers Glenn. Michonne asks if Rick is ready to go to his trial, and Rick confesses his lie about taking the guns. Michonne says that they don't need them in here. She doesn't need her sword, but when it comes down to it, she'll always be by his side. As Rick is preparing, he notices that the gate has been left open. He goes to investigate and notices that at least one walker has infiltrated the walls of Alexandria. The meeting commences, Deanna saying she wished Rick would be here for this, and Maggie, Michonne, and Carol say that Rick will be here, just give him a minute. Rick continues looking for the walker. He finds one, but two more start attacking. Rick kills the final walker on top of him, sticking the gun so far in its skull that it won't make any noise when he shoots it. Sasha goes to Father Gabriel looking for advice, but Gabriel taunts her, saying that her brother's death is her own fault and she doesn't deserve to be alive. Sasha attacks Gabriel, forcing him to the ground. Nicholas tries escaping back to Alexandria, but Glenn gets the upper hand this time around. He blames Nicholas for Noah's death and sticks a gun to his head, but he can't quite pull the trigger. So he helps him up and they both head back to Alexandria. Michonne, Maggie, Abraham, and Carol defend Rick's actions, Carol keeping her innocent act well intact. Deanna interferes and tells everybody that Father Gabriel told her that Rick's group can't be trusted. Maggie goes to see where Gabriel is, stopping Sasha from killing him. Rick approaches the meeting, dropping a walker on the ground, saying that a walker got in on its own, and they always will, and eventually people will too. Rick says he isn't sorry for saying what he did, he's sorry for not saying it sooner. He tells them that he will teach them all to change and survive. The speech seems to be going well until Pete comes in with Michonne's sword. He accidentally cuts open Reg's throat, and Abraham, like the badass he is, goes right after Pete, forcing him to the ground. Deanna tells Rick to do it, so without hesitation, he shoots Pete. But then a familiar face distracts Rick. Morgan. Rick looks on in disbelief, and we cut to black. Both of these episodes' main purpose is to show us both how far Rick has gone and how at the end of the day, he's right. Since basically the first time they walked through the gates, Rick has known that this place was not going to stay this way for very much longer. This whole peaceful civilization they were building was great on paper, but in the world they live in now, it's not realistic. But he's given it a shot. He tried to do things their way, and with things like Pete beating his wife and the woman in charge doing absolutely nothing about it, this is just a glimpse into what the future of this place could be like. For the entire episode, Rick is trying to keep these thoughts on the down low. He's still trying to do things their way and not interfere too much, but his group continuously goes up to him to discuss the issues of this place. Glenn tells Rick that Nicholas is the reason why all those people died, and Carol tells him about Pete being an abusive husband. These things build up slowly, and when Rick sees all of these Alexandrians acting normally, it pushes him over the edge to do something different. Seeing Rick sitting here pointing a gun at everybody and giving a speech that is very similar to Shane's barn speech gives you a few different ways to look at things. There's the Alexandrians who look at Rick and think, wow, this dude is insane and he might kill us all. Or there's the rest of the group, and also the viewers, who say, yeah, Rick is right about all of this. Things do need to change, and in the following episode, we see just how right Rick is. Ironically, the walkers actually get in because of Father Gabriel, someone from Rick's group, but when Pete comes in, he just proves Rick's point. Rick basically gives the same speech at the end of both of these episodes. One of them provoked fear, and the other one intrigue. And this comes down to Carl's conversation with Rick. Carl says he needs to tell them all what he told them, but in a way that they'll all listen. So he brings the walker and sets it right down in front of them, and it works because it gets them all to listen. At the beginning of the season, Rick is a man that doesn't trust anybody. He'll do anything it takes to protect his family, but after going through his changes across the whole season, Rick gives the Alexandrians a choice. It may not be a choice they like, but it's the harsh truth of reality. The world is not the way it was. Things like Alexandria don't work anymore, so he gives everybody the opportunity to change. He might be looked at as a crazy person for a little while, but he's right, and his growth as a character along the season just proves that while he can go dark, he's not too far gone. If I've said it once, I've said it 100 times, but Carol in this era of the show is so great. Not only has she been keeping up her whole sweet and innocent act since she first arrived, but we really get to see just how far she's come as a character in these episodes. She's the one to notice Jesse getting abused and tell Rick about it. She says that if Ed hadn't died, she wouldn't have made it this far, and Rick very simply says, yeah, you would've. This is such a great moment between these two. Rick is recognizing how strong Carol is, and Carol is reflecting on her own past and realizing how far she's come. She also stands up to Pete, saying that she could kill him right now if she wanted to, and nobody would think she did anything wrong. This is just a testament to how smart Carol is, and it's also kind of a full arc for her just as much as it is for Rick. Now, there's obviously other factors for Rick in this situation, but he sees Pete as the entity that will destroy Alexandria if he doesn't fix things. More people like Pete will come here, destroy this place, and do even worse things to its inhabitants. But of course, Rick is now the one going after the married woman, just like Shane did back in season 2. If you saw my analysis on Rick Grimes' video, I talked about how Rick in this season has essentially become like Shane. But the major difference between the two of them is that Rick offers to help these people change, whereas Shane would have just taken the place over. Rick tells Jesse that he wouldn't be doing this just for anybody. And I'm not too sure I've actually talked about this at all on this channel, but I really liked Jesse. I thought she was a very easy to root for character, and especially where the show takes her character in season 6, as somebody who's not afraid to fight back, I was totally rooting for her to survive. She agrees with Rick's course of action and even tells him that he's right about this place after his fight with Pete. I really don't know the large majority of people's opinions on Jessie. Maybe I'm in the minority for liking her. Let me know what you thought of Jessie in the comments below. Speaking of Rick Grimes' love interests, let's talk about Michonne. I remember when they first got together in season 6, I was really surprised because I felt like it was out of nowhere, but the more I rewatched these older episodes, I realized that there were certainly seeds being planted the whole way through. She tells Rick that she's bothered he didn't let her in on the plan, and at the end of the day, she's always going to be by his side. Even small things like Rick going to give her the gun, but she pushes his hand back down with the gun in it. It's small and subtle, but there were certainly plans in motion for Rick and Michonne to be together, even when he was going after Jesse. So my next question is, and this is a bit of an unfair question at this point, but if you can think back to when you first saw Rick and Michonne being together, were you all for it, or were you sad that Jesse had died and wished that she lived longer? But there was more to these episodes than just the drama at Alexandria. Let's talk about Glenn and Nicholas. Things between these two had been heating up since basically the first time that Glenn walked into Alexandria. But what I really liked about pairing these two together is that they're very evenly matched. Like, if you were to put Rick against Nicholas, Nicholas would have been dead right away. Rick would have never forgave somebody for shooting him at this point in the show, and there would have been no road home for Nicholas. But Glenn sees the good in Alexandria. He wants it to work, and he wants everybody there to be united as one people. That can't very well happen if Glenn kills one of its inhabitants. So after everything that's happened, Nicholas lying about the run and getting people killed, literally shooting Glenn and leaving him for dead, Glenn takes the high road and forgives Nicholas because their feud is a very small part of what's wrong with this place, and if it can be fixed without any drastic measures, then that's exactly what Glenn wants to have happen. I think that at this point in the show, Glenn is the only person who wouldn't have killed Nicholas, so pairing them together and forcing this feud between them makes a lot of sense. Their storyline would continue, of course, but that's a conversation for another video. There's also Daryl and Aaron out on the search for new recruits. Now, at this point in the season, we had seen Morgan a few times, and we knew that he was on the trail of Rick Grimes. The hype for Morgan coming back into the show was at an all-time high for us theorists and mystery lovers because it was like, why, how, who, what, literally every question that begins with a W applied to Morgan at this point, and seeing him reunite with Rick Grimes was something very highly anticipated. So having Aaron and Daryl go out on their recruitment hunt not only gave us the storyline option for Daryl to meet Morgan for the first time, but also allow us to see more of the wolves and the threat that they pose. The whole threat of the wolves in these episodes and the ones before it is basically telling the audience that if Rick doesn't change Alexandria fast, then the wolves are going to come in and destroy this whole community. While the threat of the wolves wasn't that severe in season 6, I think that their buildup in these episodes adds a bit of pressure to the entire situation. There's a known presence out there that poses a direct threat to Alexandria, and if the Alexandrians don't change, then this threat is going to wipe them out. So getting to see more of the wolves and also Morgan being able to take them out was a very nice addition to the finale episode and set up the beginning of season 6 incredibly well. There was also another storyline involving Sasha and Father Gabriel, and I definitely think this is the weakest of the storylines across these episodes. It didn't really amount to anything, but I suppose you could argue that the Glenn and Nicholas plotline didn't amount to anything either, so I think it's just kind of a personal preference type of thing. I just never found Sasha to be that interesting other than her being like a badass sniper in general, and at this point in the show, Father Gabriel was obviously a huge weenie, so for all their scenes, just to have them sit down with Maggie and realize, oh, they don't want to die, it was a fine storyline, but nothing too interesting in my book. I call this era of the show the modern drama era, and it's a pretty short-lived era. It's really just season 5B, but I think it was a really great pocket of the Walking Dead universe. The introduction to Alexandria was filled with compare and contrast situations. The community of Alexandria was not unlike your typical Modern Family drama. You have the troubled marriages, the small town cops, the teenage love story. It's all very familiar, but you contrast that with the threat of the walkers outside the walls and the runs that the group has to go on, and you have a very compelling storyline. This modern drama era was not only unlike all other modern dramas on TV, but unlike any other zombie media at the time. This whole half season found a middle ground for both zombie lovers and typical drama lovers. And while it didn't last too long, it didn't overstay its welcome either. I talked about how this finale wasn't as bombastic or explosive as the others, and I think for the end of the modern drama era, this was a perfect finale. We still got our badass moments, but having Rick track down a few loose walkers inside the walls in order to prove his point was really engaging. Glenn having to decide to take revenge or try and do what's best for the community was great. Morgan finally getting close to Rick was eventful and entirely mysterious. These two episodes capped off one of the best eras of The Walking Dead, and I don't think they get nearly enough love in terms of being a great finale. But what are your thoughts on the season 5 finale, or this season as a whole? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and also which episode you want me to cover next. If you enjoyed this video, check out some of my other episode analysis videos, or even my character analysis playlist. Remember to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more content like this. If you do, then I'll see you in the next one.
Yeah.